everyone, we're the Lords of the Sith, and today we're going to talk about Kylo as the protagonist of The Last Jedi. Let me just make it clear, it's not that we want him to be the protagonist, it's really what the movie is giving us. And there are good sides for it, and there are bad sides, and we're going to discuss them. My name is Denise, and I'm here with Lee.
Hello.
So Lee, what can you say a little bit about why Kylo is the protagonist of the movie?
Well, one of the things that we noticed about Kylo is that his story is basically central to the plot of The Last Jedi. With Star Wars, we always have a plot A and a plot B, the Force plot, right? And then the kind of resistance or rebel plot. And Kylo is centric to both story arcs. All of the action is basically converging around him. So it's all about Rey's decision to go to be with him and to help him and to turn him, makes him the focus of her journey in a way, at least for part of the movie. And then, of course, he's part of the climax of the movie itself. It's really all about him and Rey, him and Luke, him and Snoke. So all roads are leading to Kylo Ren.
Yeah, exactly. I think, the climax, because the climax of the movie is the point, the climax of any story is the point where the protagonist has some change or faces an obstacle. And at the second climax, we have only him and Luke, and it's about him, right? It's not even so much about Luke. So that's one big point. We can maybe talk a little bit. So before even the movie came out, Rian Johnson had some tweets talking about Rey and Kylo as protagonists. So that's one point, that he wasn't saying that Rey was the protagonist, that they were both protagonists. Do you remember that?
Yeah, and actually there was a lot of subtle and not so subtle marketing of the two sides of the same coin kind of thing. So we saw them as light and dark. We saw them as complementary and opposites that were kind of drawn together. So from the beginning, it was pretty clear when they started talking about The Last Jedi at all that we were going to have that role split, into the dual nature of the light and dark side of the Force. So I thought that was pretty clever. It was already setting the stage, if you will, or setting the expectations of people. Even on a subconscious level, I think we were expecting that to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was still hoping that they would be more equal. I think, Rey isn't really as much as a protagonist as him, which, it's okay, but,
It was surprising, right? Like, it was kind of, I remember reading complaints about this when The Last Jedi first came out, even among the Reylo supporters, that for part of the movie, Rey just disappears, It's like, what's going on here? We thought Rey was going to be the Luke. At least that's how it was set up in The Force Awakens, and she is, to an extent, even in The Last Jedi, but the focus shifts from her to Kylo, and it becomes pretty apparent, I think, especially in the latter part of the movie, which is the more important part where all the pieces are coming together. So I think, in a way, that's one of the downsides to the decision to make it about Kylo, is that I think Rey's character arc and the way the audience perceives her and kind of bonds with her in a way in the movie is diminished because of all the focus going to Kylo. And it's not to say that this is a bad thing as a Kylo fan. I mean, Kylo Ren is my favorite character in the sequel trilogy by far. So I'm not complaining, but as a Rey fan, I would have hoped to see a stronger focus on her journey. I feel like I know her less now after The Last Jedi than I did when I saw her in The Force Awakens,
But on the other hand, I do like Kylo and Luke. I like that ending with Luke, and I thought it was important for Luke to have that confrontation with Kylo, but maybe Rey could have had a little bigger role there,
Yeah.
And
like, if we had spent, less time on Cano Bite, we could have spent more time with Rey. I would have preferred that, to be honest.
Yeah. So we knew from the start that Kylo was a protagonist, right? So for anyone that's saying, no, he's the antagonist. No. According to Rian Johnson, he was one of the protagonists, he and Rey. So, that to say, no, she's the protagonist, not him. That's not the case. But what about the beginning, when he comes in? He's the last one to show up in The Last Jedi. What do you think about it?
Well, I think you said it very well, Denise. It's like almost the other ones are like opening acts for him. And he's like the rock star that just, swoops in on stage. And
yeah, I felt like the singer. I don't think the singer is the most important in a band. Oh my goodness, please no. But those bands, and they start playing, and then and then later the singer comes in, hello everyone, and I feel that's a little bit what we have there. And just as being, because the singer sometimes is the focal point, right? In a band, you're not the protagonist, damn it. But for the movie, he's the protagonist, and he comes at the latest to show up.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool too because Kylo has a lot of fans. So everybody was excited to see what was going to happen. How was he going to appear to us and what was going to play out? So we were all kind of just waiting for Kylo, and the tension keeps ramping up until he finally shows up. And that first scene with him is, wow. I think it was a great way to kind of set the stage for him to appear.
Yeah, you mentioned at the celebration when he showed up at the teaser trailer. What happened then?
Oh my God. So yeah, we were actually, celebrations coming up. So now we're thinking about how cool it was to be there when they showed that first teaser where everybody was cheering whenever something happened on screen. But the moment that Kylo appears and he's got that lightsaber pointing and turning it slightly in his battle stance, it just got amped to like 100,000%. Like people were just losing their minds. It was like the biggest cheering of the whole thing, I think. And because he looked so good, I think, and also because it was so fierce, and we love to see Kylo with his lightsaber. Yeah. So it was just amazing. And I think that really revved up the anticipation for the whole thing. And I thought they did it genius, the way that they kind of kept hidden whoever he was facing off against. The blue lightsaber, you can see it reflected in his eyes, and you think maybe it's Rey. A lot of people said, no, it's actually going to be Luke. I would have never guessed that.
We're coming back about how when he showed up. So I think it was cool that he showed up last, but the transition for when he shows up, it was a little bit of problematic the way it was done, because we had Luke, where's Han? And then it cuts to him. So we didn't get Luke's emotional reaction, but we got his emotional reaction. Like I said, I think even though I understand that some people were disappointed that they wanted to see Luke's reaction, I think it wouldn't be very nice to see Luke upset about Han in that moment, and that the focus should be Kylo's reaction. But you disagree, right?
Yeah, I think that's one of the missed opportunities that the movie had to connect emotionally with the old school fans, like the original trilogy fans, because of course we want to see Luke heartbroken over his friend. And I don't think, obviously we were strapped for time with The Last Jedi. I've been saying this from day one. I think it was a little bit overly ambitious and everything it tried to do in such a short period of time, which is actually a long movie, but still it tried to pack too much stuff in there. I could have done without the whole, they parked their shuttle wrong and so they got caught on camera. I would have rather spent a few seconds lingering on Luke's face when he's informed that Han is gone. Maybe even him realizing that he kind of already knew, but he had just kind of denied it to himself. And I think that moment would have been really important for us to see that Luke is still Luke, because he felt so strange to a lot of us in the first moments in The Last Jedi, the first part of the movie at least. So yeah, I don't know. I thought it was too bad, but I understand what you're saying. It's really more about Kylo than it is about Luke, and I think they made that pretty clear.
Yeah, but I think that moment they could have done it a little bit about Kylo, because in a way the movie is also about Luke's relationship with Kylo, right? So in a way that, it could have been, but it wasn't. Yeah.
But I do
remember, it was fake Luke, right? It's in the island. It wasn't Luke, damn it.
Speaking of what you said, we got to see the emotional impact on Kylo, even in a subtle way. I really like how Snoke was the one who made it apparent that Kylo was grieving over his dad. He said, the deed split you to the bone. And Kylo looks bruised and just really raw. And I thought that was a very nice way of showing us the thing that we knew, that he's heartbroken over what he's done.
He looked devastated. Adam Driver is a great actor. It was smart to remove the mask at that moment and show his face and the way he looks, and I love the close-ups. They're beautiful, like beautiful cinematography, and beautiful how we see his eyes and his face, and how that he is broken and the deed has split him in two. So that was something that I really liked and was really important.
Yeah, definitely. Something else I really liked was how I think Rian Johnson went out of his way to almost rehabilitate Kylo Ren's image with the kind of younger male audience that were rejecting him before for crying and, for getting defeated. Went out of his way to make Kylo obviously cool. And I think it starts ramping up from the moment that he breaks his mask in the elevator. And then when he goes out and he encounters the underlings and he says to them, "Prepare my ship." And it reminded me of Padme, actually, when she decides to leave the Senate and go back to Naboo. And she says, "Ready my ship." It's a really nice little callback to a little bit of arrogance, but definitely somebody who knows what they want and is defiant. I really love that little callback there. It's very subtle, but you can catch it. And then, of course, when he's channeling his grandfather and the awesome flying skills and doing these amazing
I love that.
the follow my lead. You know, like all these people, I hear them commenting online, like, that is so sexy. Like, he sounds so confident, you know, he's sure of himself, he knows that he's good at this. So it's a very different image in a way from what he was showing in The Force Awakens. Even though it's the same conflict, he's still conflicted, he's still doubting himself, but we get to see more of the fighting Kylo. So I think people really rallied for him rather than saying like, he's a Darth Vader wannabe. Now it became more clear that's actually what his arc is about.
Yeah, so I see what you're saying, that because he was so competent in flying, even though he cries, right, in the ship, which was something I was gonna comment. It's okay because he has shown competence, and I love his sequence with his mom. That's when we have him in plot B, right, where he is ingrained in plot B with the Resistance, and I think it's so beautiful that we see his face and Leia's, and I really like that sequence.
That was a beautiful scene, and I thought the acting was just wonderful for both Adam Driver and Carrie Fisher, and it just really makes you hope that we'll get to see more interactions between them in episode 9, and we hope that maybe they film stuff together that we just didn't get to see, because I think that's one of the emotional anchors, is that broken relationship between mom and son, and how we want to see them reconcile. So I thought that was wonderful, and the acting, again, can't say enough about Adam Driver, how he can be so fierce and then make himself so vulnerable, like that moment when he connects with Leia.
Yeah, and when he see that it was shot, he looks so lost, like that lost his eyes. I mean, it's really amazing. That's why, you know, so in a way, the Leia in a coma and the whole thing, it becomes a little bit about him, even though he's not that involved with the pursuing of the Resistance then, right? And then we have Rey, and what is Rey worried about other than Rey's arc in the island? It's about a little bit training, but it is about Kylo in a way, a lot of it, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think Rey's time on Ahch-To is as much about an exploration of herself and self-discovery as it is discovery of Kylo Ren and Ben Solo. And that's just as important for her arc in The Last Jedi as her own, you know, self-discovery is. So again, they're bonded, you know, they're connected in that way. And I love, again, you know, we've gushed about this so much, going back to, you know, last year when we were reviewing Under Star Wars Connection, the fact that it was just so clever to have them have this like Force Skype situation going on, and having them almost forced to talk to each other at first very reluctantly on Rey's end. Kylo trying to play it like he doesn't care, he's just curious about what's going on, but obviously they have this kind of weird magnetic pull towards each other. I thought that was super clever. And one thing I wanted to hear you talk a little bit more about, Denise, was earlier you mentioned that one of the reasons why we know that Kylo is the protagonist of The Last Jedi is because he's the one that has a romantic arc, right? So that's set up with Rey and Kylo, obviously in The Force Awakens, but it jumps many steps ahead with their time on Ahch-To. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's true. Although we can't say, because we had, you know, in the old trilogy, look, I was going to say they didn't have a romantic arc, but he kind of had one with his sister. It's confusing. I was going to say, Luke didn't have a romantic arc, but he actually had a romantic arc, right?
And when he's established as the hero, he had a romantic interest in that first movie. And then he made out with her in the second movie.
Yeah, I guess. Oh my God, I don't want to think about it. So yeah, but yeah, I agree. But it is indeed because, like, why isn't Rey with Finn, for example? Which I think they're really cute together, and because it's not. Well, it could be, you know, if you think about the old trilogy, but I agree with you that it's an important point for Kylo.
Yeah, and I mean, they went out of their way to establish him as somebody who has the potential to be a lover. The way that, even with his styling, you know, the hair, dark broodiness, and all the emotional pain and all that. So we've talked quite a bit about that in other episodes, but I think that was continued in a very nice way, and in many ways we see him shed a lot of his armor, and that was also, I think, done beautifully in a visual way, because we see him, as much as I love the man gown, we actually now get to see him shed some of that armor. We get to see more of him. We actually see him bare chested. I thought, again, that was a very important moment to show his humanity. It was fangirl service. We got to see Adam Driver shirtless. I appreciated it very much. It's all I wanted for Christmas. Just like all I want for Christmas next year is a Reylo kiss. But it was also an important part of the storytelling, okay? It was more about Rey seeing him as human. I don't know. I thought it was just extremely well done in that regard.
Yeah, I thought it was well done too, and it's just that for Rey, in that it was a lot about Kylo. It wasn't so much about her developing as a Jedi, but it wasn't clear, right? At the end of The Force Awakens, she was there to convince Luke to come back, and then she thinks, no, instead of Luke, I can get Kylo. I thought it was a little fuzzy, as to her motivations there.
I think that's part of why people struggle with her arc, and I think that's something that the Reylo haters bring up as well. The fact that, in a way, her character arc is hijacked a little bit by Kylo's arc. And I mean, yeah, I think that I understand where they're coming from. I think they could have done the same thing, but maybe spent a little bit more time showing us Rey's thought process and why it shifts so much for her. And, I don't know. In a way, I feel bad that I think a lot of the time Rey is on screen, it's not really about her so much as it is about either her trying to protect the Resistance or her trying to go after Kylo and protect him, or, make him turn and all that. And then, I don't know, it just feels like it was a little bit scattered for her. But obviously it was about Kylo for a large part of the movie. And then it ends on a note where it's kind of like, okay, she's cutting him off for now, shutting down that connection for now. So it's a little bit of a jarring note there as well.
Yeah, I was gonna go to the moment when she goes to the Supremacy. That's the only moment I think that she acts a little bit more as a protagonist, because the protagonist, a story evolves as the consequences of the decisions and the actions of what the protagonist does, and at that moment she's the one who makes the action, right?
Yes, she's the one who's driving the action by just virtue of showing up and going to Kylo. She's setting off a chain of events, but he's the one that takes the decisive step of actually ending Snoke. So he's also, again, she's the one who's instigating, but he's the one who's making this enormous decision that's going to change the landscape.
Yeah, but I don't mean that. It doesn't mean it just meant going there and then doing that. I agree that by killing Snoke, he's again in the role of the protagonist, but it had to be him, right? Because he was the one who was abused and everything. So in that sense, definitely, even if Rey was the biggest protagonist ever, I think it had to be Kylo.
Absolutely. I felt pretty good about that correct prediction. That was one thing that I said from one of my first viewings of The Force Awakens. Like, Snoke is Kylo's enemy to kill. He's the one that needs to free himself from Snoke. And it wouldn't be good for his arc if someone else eliminated Snoke for him. It had to be him. So I thought that was a pretty important moment. And we've talked a little bit about that in our psychology series, and we're going to talk more about it. But I think it was an essential, important step for Kylo Ren's arc, just as much as killing Han was. It set him in a path, and now this deed kind of alters the course.
Yeah, and that's something interesting as well to compare him with Rey as protagonist, is that usually when you have a hero, like it's more in superhero stories, they have a nemesis, right? And Finn had Phasma, and Kylo had Snoke, and now he has Hux as well, and Rey doesn't have anybody, right? So
for now, right. So this is the thing where people say, well, what's going to happen now? Because Rey and Kylo, for a moment there, were aligned, but now they're set off on opposite sides of the war. And a lot of us have predicted that in Episode 9, they're going to again be on the same side. So who's going to be on the other side of the board?
But I think they could start as enemies. It could be really cool.
Yeah.
And a red dark disciple, I don't know, and disciple, and it's really great because they are gonna be there's a romantic story there, and they are antagonists, and they have lots of lightsaber duels. I hope they make in the cartoons, but it's very exciting to see them fighting against each other, and I really want to see Kylo and Rey, and I want to see Kylo win this time.
Yeah, that's what I've been saying all along. Like, people say, I don't want to see Rey lose. She's due for it, my friend. Like, she has to, at some point, she has to not be perfect and not succeed
Yeah.
at something. So yeah, I really want to see a rematch of their snow fight, and I want to see Kylo be the one to win and be merciful this time. And I don't think that will diminish Rey's character at all. That's something I hear people saying, like, oh, they can't do that to a woman. No, that being a woman doesn't mean always being right and always being perfect. Being a hero means that you have to overcome obstacles. So what are Rey's obstacles at this point? You know, that she can't get Kylo to turn? What's that? No, it has to be like, I think she has to also learn and make mistakes and fall and actually grow. I read somewhere one of the reviewers saying that the whole saga could have ended with the end of The Last Jedi, because Rey stepping into her role of hero, Kylo stepping into his role of antagonist. Like, okay, they reached their peak. That's not the story that they set up in The Force Awakens.
No, but yeah, in a way, Kylo is her nemesis.
Yeah.
In a way that is kind of very conflicting, right?
Yeah, I think I just, one of the things I really appreciate about the story, even though I obviously, like I said before, I don't always agree with the way they've chosen to do things, but I think it's really cool that everybody's wearing different hats. People aren't like static, stuck in a certain role. There are shifting dynamics and shifting roles. So Luke at one point actually comes off as a little bit of an antagonist in The Last Jedi. And then he comes off as this heroic figure. And Kylo in the beginning, Rey's nemesis, then her ally, then her nemesis again. But with that undercurrent of enemies to lovers that's been playing out from The Force Awakens. So I think that's pretty cool. Like I've said before, I expect that there will be other little tensions or rivalries or antagonistic relationships between allies in Episode 9. I want to see Poe be an antagonist, a kind of low-key antagonist. I've talked about that before. But I think Kylo and Rey are going to play off each other in that way, but at some point they're going to be aligned, so we need somebody else on the other side. And people are saying, well, Hux, maybe one of the new characters is going to be introduced, but
Yeah, I agree. I'm looking forward to them. I want to see that. I want a lightsaber duel between these two. It's gonna
we
be
need one,
really,
yeah.
really hot. And okay, so we were talking about the throne room. It's climax one. We have two climaxes at the same time because it's the room and it's the resistance being shot, and then Holdo with her light speed thing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Which so I think that's the climax one, and then we have another climax. I think the Last Jedi is not that long, but a lot of people complain that it was a long movie, and I feel that it's because it has two climaxes. So after you climax, usually you end.
Then you rest for a while, right?
Right, and then it goes again. But so the second climax is Kylo and Luke, and now it's different. Now it's only them. There's nothing else important happening around, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that, I think that was a misstep in a way, because again, Rey, where is she? She's moving rocks or whatever. I
She
feel
moves,
like,
but she does it later, right? She does it later, not.
yeah, but I'm saying, like, her whole thing at that point is distracting Kylo so that the
Mhm.
resistance can escape, and then moving rocks. That's basically the extent of her role. So I feel like in many ways part of why the action feels like it's not really building up to something, it feels a little bit more kind of dispersed, aside from having two big climaxes with the Praetorian Guard stuff and Snoke, and then this showdown between Luke and Kylo. It's also because it feels like the resolution sometimes doesn't feel earned. Let me give you an example. Like with Holdo, she had that amazing moment, but it's a character that we're not really invested in. A lot of people really like her because of Laura Dern and because it's a woman, but like, I feel like that climax is, for her to have such a big moment, feels a little bit unearned to me. And the same thing with Rey in many ways in the end. I think it was symbolic, for her to get the two pieces of the lightsaber and for her to get Leia's trust and be now like the new spiritual leader in many ways of the light side now that Luke is gone. But she wasn't there when the big climax happened. So it felt like, it's like, okay, now she's the protagonist again. She wasn't before, but at the end, here she is getting this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I know.
Intellectually, it makes perfect sense, but I don't feel connected to that that
Yeah.
as a viewer.
I was on Twitter and somebody who doesn't like Reylo said, because I commented how she relates to Kylo in her relationship with the lightsaber. We've commented about that a lot. And they said, no, but she's the protagonist. And the moment when she believes that it should be Kylo that should be hero, and then she realizes she's the hero, and then she lifts the rock and she's the hero. And I would love that had been the case. Even I am for Reylo, but I would love for her to realize, to say, yo, I don't need these guys, I am the hero, you know. But it's not the case. And even the lifting rocks, if they had played it out more, you know, had them, oh, we're gonna, what's gonna happen, we're gonna be lost here, you know, made a big fuss about it. Or maybe she could have said before, oh my god, when I am able of lifting rocks, I'm gonna be a real Jedi. You know, you could have prepared it to make a big fuss, but it was really like just whatever, you know, really quickly. So I didn't get the sense. And also in the end, it was very clear that the hero was Luke, and Luke was the one that was gonna inspire the generation of little kids, right? Luke, not
With
Rey.
Broom Boy, yeah.
Yeah, not Rey, not Rose, even though the Broom Boy met Rose personally, right?
Yeah.
Not Leia, who has been fighting for years, damn it!
Yeah. Do you know, I think that's one of the things where the over editing, like the over cutting of things because of time to try to fit that time slot, I think really hurt moments like that, because in the book, in the novelization, there was a conversation about Luke telling Rey being a Jedi is more than lifting rocks, and that was cut from the movie. So when she kind of smirks to herself, or she kind of chuckles to herself, you know, and thinks, oh, lifting rocks, you know, it becomes really important that I can lift these rocks. But no, it doesn't. That's one of the things about The Last Jedi that I think was kind of off-putting for some people, where it feels like things happen, but it doesn't really matter in the big picture. I don't know. I don't think that is such a big deal. And that's the thing that I as a Rey fan, I would have liked to see more meat, you know, in her resolution. It's like, yeah, like we're supposed to, like this person said on Twitter, understand that's her moment of becoming a hero, but really,
Yeah.
I don't know. But you know, one thing again about the many layers of Last Jedi, and that is something I appreciate about it, is that one scene can look like one thing, but if you analyze more deeply, it's actually more than that. Like with Rey receiving the 2 pieces of the lightsaber, we're saying, oh, she's the hero now, she's the rightful owner of the lightsaber. But what does that lightsaber represent? You've talked about it, I think, beautifully, about how it's really again about Kylo. You know, we're talking about the legacy of the Skywalkers, and about something that's broken but can be mended again. So I think that was beautifully done again.
Yeah, I like the symbolism of the lightsaber, even though like I've seen people complain because Luke throws it away, and they say, "But Luke would never throw it away." But yeah, you know, I agree. But that's kind of what was in the movie, that he kind of threw his nephew away, and she goes there and picks him up.
Yeah,
So
I think that when you look at it that way, yeah, I can appreciate it. But I think it was one of those moments that was done more for shock value than and to like subvert expectations, than to actually, you know, fit in with what the character would really do.
Oh, you mean the moment Luke throws? Because it's pathos when you grow for something that seems that it's going to be serious, and then suddenly you turn it down in a different, you know, like it's like it is a very, I love this humorous technique, but I agree that it wasn't the moment for that.
But there were a lot of moments like that in the movie.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of little like, and I think that's a misplaced humorous moment. You know, that shouldn't be something.
Yeah, but at the same time, him throwing the lightsaber, yeah, it is a little bit out of character, but, you know, remember, it was fake Luke, whatever. But, you know, him throwing the lightsaber and then she picking it up, and then the lightsaber throughout the whole movie, and she looks at it, it's very present, it reminds us of Kylo. So I think in a way, and we can talk about Luke and Kylo as well, that I believe in a way, I think Luke was a little bit vilified for Kylo.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We can do it without hate.
I can do it without hate now. Actually, you know, I thought that was pretty gutsy, and it really shows the level of commitment that they have to make Kylo a more sympathetic figure that people can root for. So at the expense of the hero worship that a lot of us felt towards Luke. They've really knocked Luke down a peg or two to make him responsible in many ways for what happened with Kylo. So I thought that was kind of shocking, really, but very effective.
Yeah. I just wish they had done it more as a misunderstanding or something. Yeah, but go
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, and I know we did a whole episode speculating on how Luke was going to play out in episode 8, and I think everybody who had been following the story of Kylo Ben Solo and that was introduced in The Force Awakens and the little bit that we knew about Luke, we all expected that Luke was going to be a little bit of an antagonist, and he was actually going to be shown to be very fallible, to have made a huge mistake, because why did he just disappear and leave everyone in despair? So that's so not Luke. So we knew something was going to happen there. But I think they just made it the worst case scenario ever. One of the things that I had theorized was that maybe Luke was so powerful that he was scared of being out, in connection with the Force because he couldn't control his power, or that maybe he had been tempted and he felt like, I don't know if I can do this without guidance, without a master, because he had to teach himself a lot of things. And that's something that we don't really see in the films, but we did see it in the EU. Luke had to go and teach himself because he didn't really have the guidance anymore after all the masters were gone. So I thought that would have been nice, and he is Anakin's son. So he may have feared that he could have ended up being, like Darth Vader. So I thought that there were opportunities there for Luke to have a reason that made sense to us about why he left and dumped everybody and left Leia to, in the galaxy, basically, to face off against Snoke on their own. But then, it turned out to be this. I thought, again, that was shocking to me. I don't think I have fully come to terms with that yet. But I do appreciate that once that is out of the way, I thought that his arc was well done within The Last Jedi itself as a movie, if that makes sense, but not when you connect it to what was there before. And I think that's something that has bothered a lot of people. But within The Last Jedi, as an antagonist to Kylo Ren, and then as a bridge, hopefully, to bring him back to the light because of the way it ends between them, with him saying, I'm going to be with you always if you strike me down, and talking to him as if he were Han, like later kid or whatever. That, I think, leaves us with a sense of hope about their relationship and about Kylo's arc in general. So again, it's used in the service of Kylo's arc.
Yeah. Like again, I think we could have a little bit more of a misunderstanding, a way that you look at Luke and say, I understand you, and you look at Kylo and say, I understand you as well, But I think I understand the choice to make it more. Luke made the worst decision. There isn't a way to say, oh no, it was Kylo's fault, because he was a kid sleeping, come on. And to make him completely innocent and to dress him in white. And I've commented how, there's that art of the Padawans and he was the only one dressed in white to make him completely innocent, and he looks innocent. So it shows how Kylo is important for the trilogy. It's sad that Luke is a little bit thrown under the bus, and I feel bad that in the way that some fans that are upset if Luke complain about Reylo people and people that want Kylo's redemption. I understand in a way how, but I wish it had been done differently.
Yeah, because it wasn't just Luke; it was actually Han and Leia as well.
Yeah.
Everybody failed Kylo. So, but even then, it's not enough. With everything they did, to show that Leia and Han were not so great parents. They loved their kid, but they weren't really the best parents.
Yeah.
And Luke was just a terrible master and a terrible uncle. Even then, a lot of people still don't see a redemption arc in the cards, or possible even for Kylo. So I think they're going to have to up the ante. I think they're going to have to do more. Obviously, we talked about the possibility of Kylo making some huge sacrifice in episode 9. But I think even then, like in his origin story, they're going to have to do something more there to play up almost his innocence in a way.
Yeah.
And this is something that people have been speculating on from, December 2015. I saw a couple of theories online. One was that people were saying Kylo didn't actually kill Han. It was Han who activated the lightsaber because
I've seen it.
He knew they wouldn't let Kylo walk off the bridge. If he decided to turn against Snoke, they would have killed everybody. Blah blah blah. So I never have believed in that. Another theory is that Kylo is possessed by Snoke or brainwashed or that it's not really Kylo's free will that he's doing those things. And I hate that idea even more than the Han activated the lightsaber idea, because I feel like it weakens the character. If you take away his agency, then he's nothing. It's not good, personally for me. And then the third theory, that is the let's exonerate Kylo theory, that I actually have thought is a possibility because of the fact that we never got confirmation that it was in fact Kylo who killed the Padawans in Luke's academy. The theory is that it wasn't Kylo, that either they weren't killed, which now we know they were, or that somebody else did it. And we talked about it before, this idea that maybe it was Snoke.
Yeah, that I like.
And I think that is something that episode 8 left open, because we do see that Luke did something to trigger Kylo to bring down the hut crashing around them and leave Luke for dead and leave. Now, Luke regains consciousness and everybody's dead except the ones who left with him. So does that mean Kylo killed everybody? What if Kylo called Snoke when he was in trouble, and then Snoke sent the Praetorian Guards and they killed everybody? In a way, I think that would make Kylo even more sympathetic. It also, I think, would go a long way to explain a little bit of the hold that Snoke had on Kylo. If you think about the emotional stakes that go into that, when everybody's turned on Ben, his parents have abandoned him. We talked quite a bit about that in the Psychology of Kylo Ren episode. And then his uncle turns on him, and he feels like there's no one on his side. And then the person who steps in to help him is Snoke. It's like, I saved you when you needed me. I was there for you. I was the only one who was there for you. If you think about how that could have impacted Kylo's psyche and how it could have helped to shift his alliances, it almost makes sense. It's like you don't forgive him, but you kind of understand at least where his brain was at. Whereas now it's like, well, how could he ever do that? So I don't know. I feel like they need to exonerate Kylo in a way, even more. Because if he's a Padawan killer and a father killer and a master killer, it's just too much. But if he was innocent of that, I think that can go a long way in rehabilitating Kylo in people's eyes as somebody who can be redeemable, as well as him doing a big sacrifice, probably for Rey. And I think it would be even more significant if it wasn't even for Rey, but just for somebody Rey loves, like maybe Finn, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, that would be awesome if it was something completely selfless, because if he sacrifices himself for Rey in a way because he likes her, it's selfish,
yeah.
But if it's completely selfless, it's something that could be really amazing. And by sacrifice, people talk that we say Kylo needs to die. I'm saying that I don't mean he needs to die, and I just want to explain that death can be symbolic as well, right?
Right. If he does die, we heard the spoiler already. All the Force ghosts are gonna perform a ritual and chant and summon spirits, and then Kylo's gonna be revived. Blah blah blah. Whatever. Obviously, Kylo's not gonna stay dead. At least in my opinion.
He needs something symbolic, which can be very, very symbolic. But you need that transition and the sacrifice. It doesn't need to be a real final death. But either way, as a very spiritual franchise, death is also not permanent. But I'm not saying he's going to die or he has to die, but you need that transformation with that.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Especially because, if we were ending episode 8 on a note of Kylo's on his way to redemption, then maybe you can argue that the transformation happened already. But no, we ended the episode on a note of Kylo's even more evil now in the eyes of a lot of people.
But he isn't.
Because I know that, you know that, but a lot of people are saying, oh, he's now the big bad is Kylo now. He's taking the place of Snoke. He's only going to get worse and worse and worse. That's why this Forbes guy said that the story could just as well end there, because everybody's in their roles forever, right?
He noticed the ending, when he comes in that room and then he twirls his mustache, he kneels and twirls his mustache and says, I am Supreme Leader now. That's the ending he saw, right?
That's the ending some people saw, right? The ending I saw was a guy who was on his knees looking like he needed the biggest hug ever, with puppy eyes, having a door shut in his face, literally and figuratively, but to each their own. In any case, the story is setting Kylo up in the role of being the leader of the bad guys. So you have to know that he's going to be shown doing some additional not good things that are going to set him up against Rey before we see that switch to him eventually joining the light side where he belongs. Where the first thing that somebody said to him in The Force Awakens was that he doesn't belong in the dark side, that he has to go back to the light. And that keeps
Yeah.
coming up throughout the series. So now it's got to happen in 9.
Yeah, in terms of plot, usually the protagonist again, it's very common for them to have a false goal and to do go the easy way and the wrong way up to a certain point when there is a spiritual crisis, and then there is the change and the thing. And I think the Last Jedi sets it up very well that he's in a false goal and he's going the wrong way, the easy way, going being bad, and he's gonna have his spiritual crisis and make the change in 9. And I think it sets it up well, and it's what the protagonist does. The protagonist has a flaw and the protagonist goes the wrong way and the protagonist makes mistake, which unfortunately again it's not something we see with Rey,
Yeah, but I have
unfortunately.
to give you full credit, Denise. You were the only person that I saw talking about how episode 8 might potentially not end with Kylo Ren on the light side. Like one of the few people in the Reylo camp who were saying, I think that this could actually be a second missed opportunity for Kylo. Like he'll stick to his guns and say, no, I'm on the dark side. And I was like, no way. Like if they're going to redeem him, it has to happen in 8 because blah, blah, blah. And you were right. You were absolutely right. Now, another thing I want to say with Kylo, one of the things that we saw of him in episode 8 was the continuation of the fact that he is in a spiritual crisis. He's been in a crisis since we met him in The Force Awakens. That continues in The Last Jedi, but we get to a point where he thinks that he's figured it out by saying, let the past die, kill it if you have to, and deciding to move forward, however that's going to be. He's going to do his own thing. That's false. Like, Kylo can't let the past die. He can't kill it, no matter how much he wants to. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of people who say that's the most, like I read an article the other day that said that's the most important line in all of Star Wars is let the past die, kill it if you have to. I'm sorry, but that's a false lesson of the movie, in my opinion, because Kylo can't kill the past no matter how much he wants to. He can never deny the truth that is his family. And that's something that Laura Santeca, again, was correct in saying to Kylo. No matter how far he travels, he's always going to be his mom's son and his dad's son. So he has to reconcile. He has to come to terms. He can't pretend that Ben Solo doesn't exist. He's split. We talked about that in the psychology episode. He's got a wound and he's cut in half. So he has to embrace the past and accept it and come to terms with it so that he can be a whole person again. So I think that in many ways, episode 9 is going to have to subvert that expectation that Kylo has, that just because he said he's done with the past doesn't exist for him anymore.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, you talked about how I said that he was gonna maybe go bad again. It reminded me of Avatar: The Last Airbender and Zuko. Oh, he's an amazing character, and he has a similar arc. In the second season, he goes good and good and good and good, and then in the last minute he screws up. But it's very important for his arc because he gets everything that he thought he wanted. Suddenly, he has his father love, quote unquote, appreciation. He has everything, and it's important for him to realize that he doesn't want it. So for Kylo, in a way, it can be similar that he's not gonna be under Snoke. He's gonna have, in theory at least, all that he wanted, and then he can really make a very good informed decision to say no, 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 this is not for me, because it would be very easy to escape, Snoke being abusive, to leave that. But for him to make that step, I think it can be really cool.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. I think that it's so meaningful if Kylo actually gets everything he wants, like he gets to be Supreme Leader, and then he realizes that's not going to be enough. That's not going to fulfill him, and he's not happy doing those things, so that he sets that aside. I think that would be more important in many ways for his arc than if he got the Supreme Leader stuff taken away from him by force, like especially by Hux.
Hmm.
Uh, but even if that happens, I'm sure they'll find a way to make it like maybe he lost control over the Empire because he was making these decisions that were not evil, but
Hmm.
because being too soft-hearted or too preoccupied with, not being so bad after all, that he ends up losing control. But I'd much rather see him set everything aside and, go and join Rey. But yeah, I think that definitely where episode 8 ends, it just ends on a hopeful note for me. And I know a lot of people look at it completely the opposite, but I think all of the seeds are there for a very satisfying completion to Kylo's arc in 9. The questions that I have are more about Rey.
Yeah.
Because I think that she's kind of ambiguous. She's kind of like a little bit up in the air throughout The Last Jedi, whereas Kylo, I think, is really coming into his own, and we can see where he's headed with Rey. Well, we know she's going to end up being good, but it's like really I don't know. She doesn't feel as solid to me.
Yeah, I think that was one flaw. I think Kylo was done really well in The Last Jedi, and I think I don't blame Ryan Johnson for focusing on him because he's such an amazing character. But I think he must have written his arc, and then the rest was like fluff, and Rey was a little bit of fluff as well.
Yeah, but this is where, and I know that you don't like really necessarily consider JJ to be like especially good at storytelling, but I do. I really am a fan of JJ, especially when it comes to telling stories about women from a female perspective. So I am really hopeful that Rey is going to come into her own in a way that makes sense and ties it all together for her, because it's JJ at the helm. I would not feel that way if it were Ryan or if it were especially Colin Trevorrow. But because it's JJ God. And because he's writing with somebody who is really good about keeping a tight script that hits all the important points in Chris Terrio, I feel really optimistic about 9. So
that's
we'll
great. Yeah, but I think the setup is amazing. It's an amazing setup. We have this amazing opportunities for conflict, for it really upped the stakes, and I'm really glad Snoke is no longer there. I think it really ups the stakes and everything.
Yeah, and it gives us more room to be focused on Kylo and his resolution with himself. He doesn't have to now defeat Snoke. That's already done, so we can focus on other aspects of the journey. So even though I wasn't a fan of that approach in The Last Jedi, when I first saw it, I've come to appreciate that.
Yeah, I think the problem that people complain about Snoke is that we didn't really know he comes out of nowhere. But I don't think that's Ryan Johnson's fault. That was in the setup, with JJ and everything. That these people just came out of thin air, And in a franchise that has a very well-established lore, it's different from the Emperor in the old trilogy because it doesn't have an established lore. But when you have an established lore, you want to connect things, and it just feels disconnected. But I can understand that you wouldn't stop. Anyways, they could have done something, but I don't think the problem was that he was killed, but just that the mystery of who Snoke was ended up not being a mystery, but it was not a mystery. I don't think JJ set it up as this big plot point anyways.
Yeah. Well, I guess we really wanted to understand a little bit more about Snoke's agenda because it was shared by Kylo to some extent, and we could see that it really wasn't. That was what was fascinating about their dynamic, is that Kylo was superficially aligned with Snoke, but we knew that he had his own thing that he wanted to do. So yeah, I think that Snoke's arc feels a little bit dissatisfying in that way, but it's not really about him, so I'm totally okay. If they do a Snoke book later, I'll read it, whatever. It's really all about Kylo, and I think that, that's clear at least.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that's it for me.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, thank you very much for watching or listening. If you have any comments, any questions, you can leave a comment there. And you can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Tumblr. And you can listen to us on SoundCloud and iTunes, and we are on YouTube. Thank you very much for listening, and may the Force serve you all.